Welcome to Conscious Insights, Strategies for Leadership Evolution. Engage in roundtable discussions that spark deep dialogue with executives and thought leaders to advance conscious leadership and explore innovative practices. Join us and gain insights that will elevate your leadership journey. Hello and welcome to Conscious Insights. I am really excited about this series and this project and this conversation today. We're going to be talking about Trailblazers, the evolution of female leadership, but in a way that takes us deep into the heart. And that is why I have two people here to talk with us about this that are it's just going to be magic. And so Tatiana Arguello, who is the president and general manager of KDN TV and KULX TV and Telemundo, Colorado and Utah, and Christine Benero, the president and chief executive officer of Mile High United Way. And so I know that you all have lots of external accomplishments, and we'll probably get to some of those. I'm not going to read your bios right now, just so that we can really get into this subject of the evolution of female leadership. And I want to first talk about it. Say hello, each of you. Say kind of what you're doing now, and what's the essence of why you're doing what you're doing.
Well, you don't start out with just a softball question, Renelle. And I'm so excited to be joining truly two of my favorite women in the community. And I am Christine Benero, and I have the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of Mile High United Way. And Renelle, I'm so excited. Congratulations to you on launching this new podcast and bringing forth what are real, authentic conversations. I think we're missing that a lot in our community. So this is really, really special. Quickly, as president of Mile High United Way, you've heard me say this before. We take great pride that we are the first United Way in the world. The entire movement started here in Colorado with one extraordinary woman and four men supporting her and around her that really looked at what happens when you bring a community together to solve really complex problems. And I think my why is just that. In a time in our country, particularly right now, where we seem to not be able to hear each other or learn from each other, and yet there are so many needs in our community, I think my why is the real mission of the United Way. What happens when we take a step back, we pause, and we unite together for the common good?
Thank you. Tatiana?
And Renelle, saying congratulations to you. And thank you so much for the invitation to be here with you and with Christine Benero, who is just such a gift in my life and to the Mile High United Way and to the community of Denver. And, it's interesting, as a trustee of the board of the Mile High United Way, so much of the why of the Mile High United Way very much is shared with us at NBC Universal and at Telemundo as well, and the work that is being done in the community and ensuring that our community, has the tools and resources that they need to lead successful lives is why I'm part of that organization, because our values very much do align. So before I tell you about my current position, I always like to talk a little bit about who I am, as it plays a really important role in what I do and why I do it. Christine has heard me say this probably on countless occasions, but I consider myself a very proud 200%er. And what does that mean? It means that I am 100% American, and I am also very proudly 100% Latina. And so really, as a Hispanic, not only am I part of the fastest growing segment of the US, representing nearly 20% of the population and $3.6 trillion in purchasing power, I also really embody a very dynamic community that can navigate two worlds in English and in Spanish, across multiple environments and content with ease and cultural awareness. And I feel and I connect in Espanol. And at the end of the day, I go home and I flip the switch and speak Spanish only with my husband and my children, not because we have to, but because we want to. And I'm not an exception to the rule. There's a lot of people like me out there. And so I feel a tremendous responsibility. There were not a lot of Hispanics in my neighborhood as a child, but I was raised in a home where language and people and cultures from all over the world were celebrated. Again, Christine, I'm sure has heard this, but like many Hispanic families, my grandmother, who's very important to me, was born in Mexico. She emigrated to the United States as a young girl. She lived with us. And she's a very important part of my story. I speak about her often, and I could go on and on and on about my upbringing and the role it plays in my why. But what I can tell you is that the lessons I cherish most from my childhood are those of humility and generosity, and most importantly, always remembering to treat everyone with the same level of respect and to show up for those that need us most. And honestly, it's one of the things that I love most about my friend, like I was mentioning at the beginning of the conversation, Christine Benero, and what she's brought to the Mile High United Way. And, as president and GM of Telemundo, Colorado and Utah, while yes, I'm responsible for my station's overall operation and news, technology, marketing, community, and all of those things, finance, sales, I don't need to go through my bio, right? What that looks like on any given day varies a ton, but really the information that my team delivers every single day helps to empower the community that we serve to make decisions that will have a lasting effect on themselves and their families. And never did I know how much my heritage and upbringing and life experiences would contribute to that and very much become part of my why.
So, Renelle, you just got a glimpse of why I completely fell in love with Tatiana from the very beginning I met her. And when we talk about how roles and evolutions have changed and how families and communities have changed in some ways or the other, one of the things I share with Tatiana is my grandmother was Cuban and born in Cuba and immigrated to this country prior to Castro. But when Castro came, the rest of her family, my grandmother's family and my great aunt came, lived with us as well. But when you talk about, and why I love, Tatiana, that you go home at night and hold that culture, I grew up in a time when diverse voices were not as welcome in a community. So it became very important for my grandmother and really my father that English was the first language that we spoke, that Spanish was potentially not welcome in our community. So while I have a deep love and appreciation for my background, I am not a Spanish speaker, and it is one of my greatest disappointments in life that a community shaped my family in a way that wasn't allowed my family to be exactly who they were. So to see that now and how you're raising your family, Tatiana, and embracing that and having the community embrace that is really joyful to be able to see.
I absolutely agree. And, I have not too many regrets in my life. And one of them is that I didn't continue with my Spanish. And that was the language I was learning as a child. And then I didn't continue. And my daughter is in her second year of Spanish. She's an 8th grader. And I think she's like a little bit like, why do you only speak English? Like, what? Really? This is part of who she's going to be. And it makes me really proud. So thank you both for speaking to, I'm doing this thing on the outside, but what drives it is something that's important to me on the inside. And I think that is absolutely key. The other thing I just have to say about Christine is, it had to have been 11 years ago because my second child is 11. And when he was 6 weeks old, I got a call to come off the board of a nonprofit I was on and be their interim CEO. and I was really tired, and I would channel Christine Benero every single time I was on stage. I don't know if I've ever told you that. And it wasn't ever what you said. I mean, yes, you say great things, but it was how you stood up there and poured your heart out in these large places. I'd see you speak, and I was like, if I can just get up there and pour my heart out, and just speak from that place, it's going to be okay. And that is what I'm hearing from both of you. Is I hear there's powerful things you are doing in your community, and you're linking that to your heart. Would that be correct?
I think
So, yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think so, and Tatiana, I'm so anxious to hear, particularly from you and in the industry you've been in. I think that has been a change for women over time, of the ability to bring their full selves to a conversation, whether it's you and I have a 6-week-old baby and I've been up all night and I still have to speak, or recognizing that we are mothers or daughters or sisters or granddaughters, and that comes with us. And I think I just learned really early on that I didn't have the capacity to separate those things. And sometimes it works in your favor. I think it more does now for women to be who they are. But I think there was a time where we really had to think about, this part of my life is over here, this part of my life is over here, and it's really not okay to connect. So that is one of the positives I think I have seen over time, of, at least for me personally, feeling more confident. I can be all of you.
Awesome.
Oh, 100%. You're so right, Christine. And there was something too, I think, you mentioned the word acceptance at the beginning of the call as well. And I think a lot of that is acceptance of ourselves. And generationally, things have changed quite a bit, right? You talked about, you growing up and what was taught to you at a time, and how that's begun to change now, with my children and what I'm teaching to them. So I have to say this, as a woman and Latina in general, I have to say I'm very, very fortunate to work for a company that truly does believe that a diverse, equitable, and inclusive company is a more effective company. But that said, bias is out there, and it presents itself in a lot of different ways. And as women, and especially women of color and Latinas, it often seems like we still have to prove ourselves in the same role as our male counterparts, right? And it's not the men's fault, by the way. That's not the point of this. I think it's just, it's simply unconscious bias. Yeah. And the reality of that all is that it's out there, and a lot of us have it. And so we need to bring not only our full selves to the table and to the conversation, but also men to the conversation, right? We often surround ourselves with female mentors and other women who are like us, or who we want to be like, right? But we need to have men too, right? We need to have women, and we need to have men, and we can't shy away from bringing men to the conversation. And if we ask for feedback, we can't be afraid of what they might say, right? Like you talked about, Christine, Francis Weisbart at the beginning, and being supported by those 4 men as well. That took a lot of courage. Yeah. To surround herself with those men at that time as well. And, and I remember, like, men, they have a different way of saying things. There's a lot of radical candor, and they're straightforward. They don't sugarcoat things, right? One of my greatest mentors, I remember when I first got into this role as president and GM, we have these monthly meetings with other GMs across the region, or across the country, actually, with our executive leadership team. And I was presenting whatever it was that I was presenting about my stations. And it was a boss of mine from New York, and who I still to this day consider a mentor. And he called me and he said, Tatiana, you didn't sound very smart on that call. And I said, oh, you're kidding me. What did I do? He said, you said, way too much. You're diminishing yourself. Be confident. You know what you need to say. You know what you want to say. Stop saying, stop tripping yourself up. And I was like, oh my, and I started overthinking it, right? Like I started dwelling on that. But at the same time, I was really thankful. And so I've been mindful about that too, right? Like generation to generation, it's definitely changing. But yeah, you were talking about a little bit, Christine, too, right? Like, like girls are taught to, to be kind and to speak when spoken to and to take your turn and all of that, right? Like men are taught to win, to be confident, like you said, to speak up, right? Like that phrase, man up. To me, like I often I'll say that to myself, like man up. But to me, that doesn't mean act like a man, right? Like I might be wearing a blazer today, and Christine knows I'm all about the flowy dresses and the jewelry and the makeup and all the stuff in a lot of places, right? So we don't have to look like men. We don't have to act like men, but we should be confident, right? We need to emulate those things that they do that helps them, right? Get their ideas to the table, that helps them bring their ideas to fruition. I think we're in the right direction. Sorry about that. I went on and on.
No, it's fine. It's fine. There's so much juicy stuff I just want to add and ask questions about. There's a couple things you said, Tatiana, that really, made my heart go like, yes. One is that this isn't just about surrounding ourselves with women. This is about bringing an integration of energies to our society, to our system. If we want to talk about the patriarchy that we've lived in the last hundreds of years, there are many women, people that identify as women, that are really part of the patriarchy, right? I mean, we're all part of it, but maybe don't necessarily want to see a shift as well. So it's not like men need to change so we can change, or it is really a little bit of both. And I love that you bring this up, that we've got to have both. I just recently was in a part of a women's group that was so supportive. I loved the support and the relationships. And I said, there's something really missing about this group for me as a business group. And what's missing is something that I see men do all the time. And it's make connections and referrals for people. And we're supporting each other, but I also need connections and referrals in this particular thing that I was doing. And so I love that you brought both of those things up. Christine.
Oh yeah, mentorship and advocacy, right? Surrounding yourself with those people that aren't just going to teach you, but are going to say your name in a room when you're not there.
Right.
Right. On both sides, men and women, right?
I think and Tatiana, I'm like Renelle, I'm writing down everything you're saying as I usually do. And I look back on my career, and some of my biggest supporters and mentors were men. It's being able to discern those people who believe in you, whether they're men or they're women, and what you can take from them and what you can learn from them and who you go to for that kind of advice. And I think it is part of why I have always loved the United Way mission too, because I think that goes beyond just gender as well. It's what voices are at the table. What voices are you listening to? And sometimes asking the question, even more importantly, who's not at this table, or who are we not hearing from? And what am I missing? And that has been one of the greatest learnings and joys for me over my career of how you get those very different perspectives, and yet still, and you talked about it at the beginning, Tatiana, how your work aligns with who you are and your values. And that is really, I think, for any of us, if we can hold on to that, then it opens you up to learn from all sorts of people, even maybe some folks that you have completely different views from or can't agree with, but you can still sit down and figure out how to listen to and to appreciate, perhaps, even if you don't agree, where they're coming from.
Absolutely. I have another question for the two of you, is that we're talking about how far we've come. We're talking about things we couldn't do before. And we're at this moment in time where there is a lot of progress that has been made, and there is still so much we need to do. How would you speak to where we are now, what the beautiful parts of it, the really challenging parts of it, and then we'll switch over in a little bit to let's dream. What's going on today?
So if I may, I'd like to combo this with point you were making previously about women and female executives and their role as well, and the change that we're starting to see. Um, and and the reality is my experience with women and female executives has been very, very positive from the beginning. As a matter of fact, my first general manager was a woman, and she really made a point of getting my name out there. And when some people didn't necessarily think that I'd be able to take on the bigger jobs, she was the one that said, "Listen, just give her a shot," right? And I've had women like that throughout my careers that have supported that. And then over the last 25 years, which is how long I've now been in the workforce, I've had men that have done that too. So I just kind of want to, when we talk about where we're going and what's changing, I will tell you one of the biggest things that I've had to overcome myself is my own insecurities. Right. Over the years, I've often questioned my decisions. And I think that to some extent we need that. We do need to question our decisions, especially as we're developing. Um, but I will tell you, after a few years in my current role, one of the women who I most admire among our executive leadership team said to me, "Tatiana, I heard through the grapevine that you've been seeking a lot of validation on every single decision that you make. You need to trust your gut," right? He was like, "I have seen the result of some of the decisions that you've made, and you make good ones, especially, when it comes to building strong teams and thinking outside of the box and getting people to trust you, right? That's a lot. So again, just trust yourselves, trust your instincts." And then another senior member of our team, who I just adore, another amazing boss of mine at the time, he said to me, "Tatiana, you're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay. As long as you learn from them, you gotta move on quickly and stop dwelling." Right? I talked about like dwelling. It has gotten me in, it's like been in my own way at so many different times and points in my career. And I still struggle with it, but I'm learning to put things into perspective and move on. And so, yes, I do seek validation at times, but we also have to trust ourselves as well. And when we need help, we need to say it. We need to say what it is and what the goal of that ask for help is, right?
Yeah.
I love that, Tatiana. And the biggest mistakes I have made in my career or decisions I have made have been ones when I have gone against my own gut. When it was just something was niggling at me somewhere, but someone else or something else, because of a confidence issue, influenced me to do something else. And if I had only taken that moment to believe in myself and that my gut was right, I would have avoided, I think, a lot of things in the future. So it is. I think we all need that validation and someone to cheer us on. And at the end of the day, we also need to be our own biggest cheerleaders. Renelle knows this well, and one of my, like you, Tatiana, I worshipped my grandmothers, but also my mother, who was so important in my life and grew up in that era where everything that I have today is because of my mother and her generation. And she tells the story the first time she was working at an ad agency in New York City, and she had been there 3 years, and they hired a man in a similar role. They sat next to each other. As my mother said, she kept coaching him on his ideas and all those things. And one day, it was in the old days where you got paychecks. She got his paycheck by accident, opened it. He was being paid double what my mom was paid. And she took it into her boss and said, "I don't understand." And his response was, "Well, I'm sure you're going to have a husband someday who supports you." And, just the whole conversation. And that was in, my lifetime. I was born several years after that. So when you ask Renelle, what's the evolution? It's conversations like that with my mother, who would stand up and believe enough in herself and her decision making and her ability to say, no, this is not right. This is where, and I still think we have a long way to go. Tatiana, I know you have been the first of many things. I was the first woman CEO of the United Way since Frances Weisbard Jacobs. So we still have a lot of firsts to go, but we have come so far. And my mom always told me that, to recognize how far we've come and celebrate that, to make sure we are supporting and moving those women along with us, but never forget we still have a ways to go.
There's something you both said, and you both said it with such conviction, but I want to come back to it for a second, because you talked about using your intuition. That's always talked about and always used in business. And it really is more of a, I don't want to say a female thing, but a feminine energy, and a really powerful feminine energy that we don't use enough in business. And yet the two core things that have gotten in your way is when you did not listen to your gut or did not listen to your intuition. And so, if we could just explore that for a second of yes, we need the linear and the analytical. We need that is really important. How does our intuition play a role? How does being a woman and using our intuition, and how is that right there part of shifting our systems?
I think it's such a great question, and maybe it is just maybe it's because the roles we play first in life as a daughter or a sister, or in my case, an aunt, of the ability to really listen and try to hear other people or observe and watch. Maybe not what people say, but what they do, or watching their facial expressions, allows perhaps women to read a room differently, or to be able to, that's where the gut feeling comes in often, of how will, if this decision is made, what's the impact on other people, as opposed to just on the business or whatever it happens to be. I think it's not uniquely female, but I think perhaps women lead with that, as opposed to perhaps some other things, and to learn to trust that is just an important piece of information, as the spreadsheet in front of you is an important piece of information. They are not separate.
Yeah. There's an element of trusting your gut and using intuition, but there's also, this idea of just continually, exploring and being open to new things and new ideas, new technologies. Right? I mentioned 25 years with NBCU and Telemundo, and things have changed so much. Right? When I first started in this business, all you needed to get your favorite, shows and news and entertainment was a TV and a set of bunny ears, or an antenna for anyone listening that doesn't know what bunny ears were, right? But like today, thanks to advanced technology and innovation, and a lot of really great exchanging of ideas, and, a little intuition as well, and just leaning into different people and hearing, what's out there and where people are, right? We are in a completely different place, and we're meeting audiences, on all their preferred platforms, wherever that is. Streaming is such a big part of our world now, right? Like with NBCU and Peacock and Telemundo, all of that, right? Like being open to everything that is changing. And it can feel scary at times. Change can feel really scary, right? And I think also, not just as women, I think people in general, right? Like I think anything that is kind of rocking our world makes us feel a little insecure. But again, I think if we take a deep breath as women, and again, trust that we can do it, and know that everybody, men, women alike, are going through these changes at the same time, right? And we talk about it. It just makes it better. And I'll tell you too that, as a Latina professional who's made her way up through NBCU and Telemundo, and has held several management roles, like just as a reminder to all, future female executives. Like, just again, going back to the beginning, be proud of who you are and where you came from. Get involved in the conversation, because you see, bringing your full self to the table and your full identity to the work that you do, it's so important, regardless of where we are in that evolution of technology or business, right? Because it fosters dialogue and it helps us as business leaders or as businesses make decisions that are making a difference in people's lives and the communities we serve, regardless of what business we're in or what new technology is happening at the time, right? So be confident. You can still be kind and speak when spoken to at times, but speak when you think it's right or when you think things aren't right too. And know that our voices and our ideas really matter a lot.
Absolutely. And so I want to share something with you, and then I want to ask you both a question. So I'm going to share something first, and then I'll share the other thing. Tatiana, when you were speaking just now, it took me back to fourth grade. I grew up in the Vail Valley in Colorado in fourth grade, and fourth grade was the end of elementary school then. And my best friend was Elena Martinez. And our fourth grade teacher sat us down and he said, "I want you to do me one favor." And I said, when we were like, we're in fourth grade, he goes, "I want you to still be friends when you're in middle school. Things change." And he meant we didn't talk about DEI, especially in fourth grade. But we didn't even really talk about racism in fourth grade. And he specifically said he was worried about just seeing what happened as we got older and wanted us to stay friends. And we absolutely stayed friends, but it never left me as I watched as we got older and the girls separated more depending on our cultural backgrounds, depending on our genders. And it's never left me. I've always remembered that and tried to live my life that way. So thank you for bringing that up, Tatiana, and making it such an important part of your life. And my next question.
I told you I'd tear up a bit of a prior. And the story really touched my heart, Renelle. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I wish I'm not in touch with Elena anymore, but if I was, I would still remember that. And I wonder if she remembers me. So if you're listening.
Oh, I would bet she does, Renelle. When someone, I'm willing to bet my last dollar on that.
Well, if you're listening, Elena, please call me. So
every Hispanic experience is a little bit different, right? And the reality is I was very fortunate growing up, right? I grew up in a home of privilege. My father was a general thoracic surgeon, cardiovascular surgeon. And so I mentioned at the beginning that there weren't a lot of Hispanics in my neighborhood. So we were a thing, right? And my parents really made it a point to celebrate our Hispanicness, if you will, right? And to invite people to our home so that they could share in our traditions and our food and our community and our cousins and all of that, so people could experience the richness of our community. And one of my best friends, since I was 2 years old, she is non-Hispanic, and she's been so wonderful. And many of my friends today are non-Hispanic. But I will tell you, even as a Latina growing up in a neighborhood of privilege, there was still things that I experienced, right? Sorry, and I'm getting choked up again, but no to bullying out there. I'm just going to say this, right? Like, we've come a long way, but I will tell you, a friend of mine stood up for me once, and I'll never forget it. And we were best friends to this day, because there was a little boy on the playground who called me Tatiana Tortilla Face, right? Just as a nod to my Mexican heritage. And she stood up and she came running. She'd heard it, and she came running across and she said, "Oh yeah, well, you're a pig-nosed Frankenstein." And she grabbed my
I love her already.
Right. And we walked away, and it was just, and I don't remember what happened after that, but she stood up for me and she showed up, and she didn't have to. And I was just stunned that had happened. And she embraced me in such a beautiful way. And I will always thank her for that. And I just have to remember, I don't need to call people that same phrase. Right? Unless
appropriate.
But, as elementary school kids, it felt very appropriate at the time. And again, just remembering to always share the beauty, because there can be nastiness everywhere. And so sorry, I do get a little choked up at times. So thank you for
I think that's great. That's the expression. I mean, that's the expression of wholeness that we talked about. Tears are actually joy finding its way, outside. It's probably one of our greatest strengths. I don't know whoever said it was a weakness, because they were wrong. What we know, specifically in the research from the leadership circle, is that women are consistently scoring higher on our conscious leadership assessments. And what makes a great leader actually does not vary. It doesn't vary by gender. What makes a great leader is what makes a great leader. And we do it from a conscious perspective. So it's like from the inside out. It's not just the traits of a leader. It's like what drives you from the inside. And one of the big differentiators why women are scoring higher is about relationships and leading by example. And which is just a key thing when it comes to expanding our consciousness. And yet, well, let me just tell you one more quote. Being a conscious leader has many, many ties to profit and business outcomes. Many, many. And yet we have way fewer women in leadership roles than we need. Let's talk about that. Why and how, what needs to change? Because there are women that are fully qualified that actually choose not to take leadership positions because I've heard people say, I still want to have a life. I can't be who I am if I'm an executive. I've heard, and some people want to be there, but can't, right? Are not making it. So there's all kinds of reasons, but there is data saying that the way that women are scoring higher on conscious leadership scores, what are we going to do? What's the dream? What are we going to do about this? And what is the world going to look like when we do something about it?
So one of the things I just want to mention, at the Mile High United Way, one of the things that Christine reminds us all of, and one of the things that we celebrate the most, is this idea of village and community, and a village and community of support, right? And what that looks to each of us varies so much, but you've got to find it, as women especially, right? And it's not easy. You've got to find people who can support you, because there is this idea, right, that we've got to do it all. We don't have to do it all. We have to have the right support system, right? I will say I am very fortunate. My husband is incredibly supportive and has been my number one cheerleader throughout my growth and development. And we were married in 2007. I was promoted and moved to New York in 2008, and he joined me. And it was like we moved in the height of the recession, and there was not a job interview to save his life, right? But he was there, and he was incredibly supportive. Of course, then he got back into the workforce, and we were doing great. Had our 2 children in New York City, and I was feeling like I was at the top of my game. Leading sales for the Northeast sales division for the Toledo Station Group. Never thought we'd leave New York City, and this opportunity to run our station in Colorado opened up, and I wasn't so sure I wanted to leave. I was feeling very, very comfortable in my role in New York City. The children were very comfortable as well. Life in New York City was actually very convenient for us, believe it or not. We lived in our 6-block radius, and my husband had a great job. It gave us opportunity to travel often. And so when this opportunity came up, I remember somebody first coming to me and saying, have you thought about going back to Colorado? And I said, absolutely not. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. My family's happy. My husband's got a great job. My kids are stable. Like I feel like I have balance right now. I'm comfortable. And one of my mentors to me said at the time, you really need to look at it. It is such an incredible opportunity for growth. And New York will be here. or somewhere else will be there, or Colorado will be. Like, you don't know what the future holds for you, but this is not your end game. And he just encouraged me to look at the job and to really explore it. And I did. And all I could think about, though, was leaving a city that had really come very comfortable to me and my family, and to leave a job that I was very comfortable with also, and to take the risk, not knowing what I was going to find in a lot of ways, right? You know, the job on the surface, what it is, but like you start to unpack everything and you have no idea. And so I looked at it and I applied and I got the job, which totally freaked me out. And then I said, never mind, I don't want to go. I'm good doing what I'm doing. I'm happy. My family's good. We've got a great life. Is there anybody else that wants to, that can do it? And they're like, you can do it. You're the one. You're the one that we want. You're the one that we want to do this. Go do it. You know, take the risk, and you got this. So like I had a conversation with my husband, and he's like, we've got this, right? We've got this. And he was incredibly supportive in it. He's my village. He's my community, right? And we all have some sort of village, some sort of community, some sort of support. And so we did this, we moved, or we got ourselves ready to move. And then somebody said to me at the same time, well, what's your husband going to do though? Isn't he worried? And I'm like, well, you know, the one that told me. No, he wasn't exactly the same mom, but he was like, you know, part of the people that were encouraging me. So that's kind of a long-winded, I don't even know if I answered the question. It's that you got to take the risk. So people are taking risks all the time, and you'll find balance, right? You'll find balance. And I know that as women, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do everything, to be the perfect executive, to be the perfect mom, to be, you know, to fit all the things in, to fit in the workout, to fit in the, you know, all the things, the friend time, the community time, all the stuff. But you have to prioritize, and you will find balance. And depending on whatever project you're working on at the time, you'll find that balance for that moment. And again, just surrounding yourselves with people that can support you makes it that much easier, right? So we've got to have those open lines of communication with our village, with our community of support.
Oh, thank you.
Thank goodness you said yes. That's all I can say, Tatiana, because you have been the gift to Colorado, to me personally. And what I loved about your journey is, Renelle, it's to the very thing you're talking about. When you have those relationships around you that believe in you and support you and give you that confidence and that courage, and can still hear your fears, but to say, yes, amazing things change. And I think, Renelle, that's where we have to keep going, because Tatiana is just leading by example. And we need more of those examples, because that's where I think sometimes we run into structural barriers. And how do we change the structure? This is in no way a political statement, but the fact that in our state, we yet to have a woman governor. We have never had a woman mayor. We have never had a woman president in this country. Something is still keeping structurally women who are extraordinary from stepping into other roles. And that's what I think we all have to be consciously keep working at, by doing all the things we've been talking about here, building those relationships, trusting ourselves, having the confidence in ourselves, and then to continue, as my mom did, to push at those barriers and say, no, I do not only have a seat at this table, I have a seat in every power structure that exists. And how do we support ourselves in getting there?
Well, thank goodness for your mom. I think she probably started to make some change. She was a pioneer in New York City for sure, at an agency at that time. But, you know, I'll go back to something that I was talking about before. And a lot of that is insecurity as well. You know, a lot of times as women too, we're not going for the jobs. We're not putting our names in.
That's true.
A lot of us are, right? So I don't want to, you know, take credit away from anybody that has put in their job and they've not yet gotten the job, right? Keep going for it. Keep going for the job, and because you're going to hear a lot of no's until you hear a yes, right? And if it's not the right place, then go somewhere else and keep putting your name in. But as women too, I mean, there is research about this, that as women, we doubt our ability to perform the job. And we'll look at job descriptions, and don't quote me on the percentages here because I don't know exactly what they are, but we'll look at a job description and maybe have 75, 80% of the qualifications on that job description and go, they'll never hire me. I'm not qualified for that job, right? Whereas oftentimes, again, not their fault, right? Our male counterparts oftentimes are like, oh, I've got, again, don't quote me on these percentages. I got 60% of the qualifications. I'm perfect for that job. I'm going for it, right? Again, it's that confidence. It's this, I can do it. Here are my transferable skills. Here's what I can offer. And maybe they don't get offered it either, right? With 60% of the qualifications or on the job description, right? But they're going for it, and they're going for it with confidence. So again, we've used the word confidence throughout the conversation. I think that's such a big part of it as women. So women, go for the jobs. Take the leap of faith, right? You will be supported. You'll find it. You'll find your village. You'll find your support, right? It happens. It all works out. I will tell you, when I first got here, I cried literally for 2 years straight. And I think Christine knows this, right? That from the station to my home, the front door of my home, I would, put on a great face and here and there. And then in my car was like, what have I done? What have I done? What am I doing? Right? Because when you change roles, also there is a lot of change that happens just to you personally, right? You're confronting things that you've never confronted before. You're dealing with new issues. You're dealing with new tasks. You're learning new things. And it can be scary. It can be really scary, especially when you have a P&L or you have, somebody to answer to, right? But over time, it gets easier. It gets easier. And I'm not saying cry. I wasn't crying and miserable, right? I was
just a lot of change.
I was missing my friends, and I was missing like my old way of doing things.
As we wrap up today, what I wanted to say is what I heard you both say was I heard the word balance, and I heard the word we need to just have confidence and get in there. And it's what we do that's going to change these systems. And I absolutely agree. It's how we show up every day is what is going to change the systems. I often use the word harmony when I'm talking to women rather than balance. It's like, be true to yourself and find the harmony that you need. Get the role and then change the role so that it works for the harmony that you need. And when you do that, you're changing it for yourself and for the next person that comes along. And that's how we change these systems, is by being who we really are and bringing that. And so that is why I'm so inspired to start this with the two of you, because you bring the definition of female power. It has heart, it has head, it has gut. It is the most beautiful definition of power that I know. And so thank you so much for being brave, for being confident, for being scared and doing it anyway, for facing the change, and for really modeling for other women, what it takes and what we can still do. So Tatiana and Christine, until we meet again, maybe we could do like a slumber party or something. Thank you so much for being on the line.
Thank you, Renelle. This was, as I said, two of my favorite women in this community that I get to hang out with you for half an hour. I am now feeling inspired, and we'll keep going.
Awesome. Thank you.
Likewise.
For more information, visit insight-cc.com or email us at info@insight-cc.com. We look forward to hearing from you.